I'm Hazel. Sitting here in the courthouse hallway, the weight of the past few months finally starting to lift, I can't help but reflect on the whirlwind of events that led me here. It all started with a simple credit alert on my phone, but what followed was a nightmare that tested my trust, my family bonds, and my very financial stability. It was a Tuesday night, 11:42 p.m. To be exact. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when my phone pinged with a credit alert. A new Business Express credit line of $75,000 had been opened. I sat up in bed, staring at the screen in the darkness of my bedroom. I knew for a fact that I hadn't opened any business credit accounts. Panic set in as I immediately logged into my credit monitoring service. As I scrolled through the recent activity, my heart sank. In the past week, 3 new accounts had been opened in my name: a $75,000 business line of credit, a $50,000 equipment financing loan, and a $125,000 commercial real estate loan. All of these applications had been submitted using my personal information, employment history, and social security number. The total fraudulent debt was a staggering $250,000, a sum that could destroy my financial life. But I had a hunch about who was behind it. My younger brother Ethan had been staying in my spare bedroom for the past 2 months. He claimed he was getting back on his feet after his latest business venture had failed miserably. During his stay, he had unrestricted access to my home office, my daily mail, and all my personal documents. I quietly got out of bed and tiptoed to my home office, careful not to wake Ethan. When I got there, I noticed that my filing cabinet was slightly ajar. I always kept it locked, but the lock had been picked. It was clear that someone had been rummaging through my tax returns, bank statements, employment records, and insurance documents. On my desk, there were faint impressions on my notepad, as if someone had pressed down hard while writing. I suspected it was Ethan practicing my signature. I opened my laptop and checked the browser history. Sure enough, someone had been researching business loan applications, how to establish corporate credit using personal guarantees, strategies for maximizing loan approvals, and even articles about identity theft penalties. The searches had been conducted during business hours when I was at my job as a forensic data analyst for a large insurance company. As a professional in the field of fraud investigation, I had extensive experience with digital evidence preservation and financial crime patterns. My home network was set up to log all internet activity, and I had security cameras installed throughout my apartment after a break-in 2 years ago. I pulled up the network activity logs for the past month. Ethan's devices, his laptop, tablet, and smartphone, had been accessing loan application websites, business formation services, credit monitoring sites, and financial planning forums. He had also downloaded copies of my personal documents and uploaded them to several cloud storage accounts, which I could trace through the network traffic. The security camera footage was even more damning. One clear video showed Ethan sitting at my desk last Tuesday, methodically photographing my tax returns and employment verification letters with his phone. Another clip from Thursday showed him practicing my signature while holding my driver's license for reference, trying out different pens and writing styles. But the most incriminating evidence came from my smart home system. Ethan had made several phone calls from my living room, not realizing that my voice assistant automatically logged and stored conversations containing financial keywords like loan, credit, fraud, and identity theft. In one recorded call from last week, he told someone, "Your credit is perfect, and you're too stupid to use it. I'll make millions with these loans and pay everything back before you even notice." She's such a boring, conservative type who never takes financial risks. In another conversation, he bragged, "My sister is this uptight data analyst who never does anything exciting with money. She has perfect credit and no debt, so I can probably get approved for anything using her information. She's too trusting and disorganized to suspect anything until it's too late." The next morning, I watched as Ethan got ready for what he called important business meetings. He was wearing the best suit I had bought him for job interviews and carrying a new leather briefcase filled with documents that I recognized as copies of my financial records. "Big day today?" I asked casually while making coffee, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Huge day," Ethan replied confidently, adjusting his tie in the hallway mirror. "I'm finalizing some major business deals that are going to change everything. Within 6 months, I'll be running a multi-million-dollar operation." "That sounds exciting. What kind of business are you starting?" I inquired. "An import-export company specializing in high-end electronics from overseas. Consumer devices, computer components, that sort of thing. The profit margins are incredible if you have enough capital to get started properly." "How are you financing the startup costs?" "That sounds like it would require a significant investment," I probed. Ethan's expression became evasive, and he avoided making direct eye contact. "I've got some investors lined up. Silent partners who recognize my business acumen and want to work with someone who knows how to make serious money." "That's wonderful. I hope everything works out for you," I said, maintaining my act of being a supportive sister. "Oh, it will," Ethan said with complete confidence. "This time next year, you'll be asking me for financial advice instead of the other way around." After Ethan left for his meetings, I wasted no time. I called the 3 banks that had approved the fraudulent loans. I spoke with loan officers at each institution and confirmed that the applications had been submitted using my personal information, but all correspondence was to be sent to a business address I'd never heard of, a small office complex across town. The loan officers were shocked when I explained that I hadn't applied for any business loans and that someone was using my identity fraudulently. Ms. Harris, these applications were approved based on your excellent credit history, stable employment, and comprehensive financial documentation, said Mr. Brown from Business Express Credit. The applicant provided tax returns, bank statements, employment verification, and even credit reports. Everything appeared legitimate. "Those documents were stolen from my home," I explained. "I need to file fraud reports immediately and freeze all accounts." "We'll freeze the accounts pending investigation, Mr. Brown assured me. "This appears to be sophisticated identity theft. You should contact law enforcement immediately. This level of fraud typically involves federal charges." I spent the morning filing fraud reports with all 3 banks, reporting the identity theft to the Federal Trade Commission, and documenting everything for my insurance company. Then I called Detective Mark Davis from the Financial Crimes Division, whom I'd worked with on several insurance fraud cases over the years. "Detective Davis, this is Hazel Harris from Global Insurance. I need to report identity theft and business loan fraud. I have extensive evidence including video footage, audio recordings, and digital forensics," I told him. "How extensive are we talking?" he asked, clearly intrigued. "Complete documentation of a systematic fraud scheme including network logs, security camera footage, audio recordings of the perpetrator admitting to the crimes, and a timeline showing premeditation over several weeks," I replied. "That's more evidence than we usually see in identity theft cases. Can you come in this afternoon?" "Bring everything you have," he said. At 2 p.m. I sat in Detective Davis's office with 2 thick folders of printed evidence and a laptop containing digital files. The documentation was overwhelming: screenshots of fraudulent loan applications, network activity logs showing Ethan's research into business loan fraud, security camera footage of him stealing my documents, audio recordings of him bragging about his scheme, and a detailed timeline showing his systematic approach to identity theft. "Hazel, this is some of the most comprehensive fraud evidence I've seen in 15 years of financial crimes investigation," Detective Davis said, reviewing the materials spread across his desk. "You documented everything. As a forensic data analyst, you know how to preserve digital evidence, maintain chain of custody, and build cases that will hold up in court." Detective Davis examined the bank statements showing the fraudulent accounts and loan disbursements. Your brother obtained $250,000 in business loans using your identity. The applications show sophisticated planning, premeditation, and knowledge of banking procedures. He's been living in my apartment for 2 months, systematically collecting my personal information. The camera footage shows him photographing my documents over several weeks, not just a single opportunistic theft, I said. The audio recordings are particularly damaging, Detective Davis noted, playing back Ethan's recorded conversations. He explicitly admits to identity theft and fraud. He also demonstrates clear knowledge that his actions were criminal and that he was deceiving you. What kind of charges are we looking at? I asked. Identity theft, bank fraud, wire fraud, and potentially money laundering if he's moving funds between accounts to hide the source. With this amount of money involved and evidence of premeditation, we're definitely talking about federal charges. He could be looking at 8 to 10 years in prison, Detective Davis said. He leaned back in his chair. There's something else you should know. We've been tracking a pattern of family-based identity theft cases recently. Perpetrators often target relatives because they have easy access to personal information, and they assume family loyalty will prevent prosecution. Ethan definitely assumed I wouldn't catch him or wouldn't pursue charges if I did, I said. The sophistication of his scheme suggests this isn't his first time committing fraud. You should run his background and see if there are other victims we don't know about. That evening, Ethan returned home in high spirits, carrying shopping bags from expensive stores and practically bouncing with excitement. Hazel, you'll never guess what happened today, he said. He set down bags from Gucci, Apple Store, and a high-end luggage retailer. All my business financing came through. I now have access to over $250,000 in working capital. That's wonderful, I said, still playing the supportive sister. Your investors must really believe in your business plan. They do. In fact, I've already started making some strategic purchases for the company, he said, showing me a new Rolex watch, an expensive Italian leather briefcase, and a top-of-the-line MacBook Pro. Image is everything in international business. You have to look successful to attract the right clients and partners. That makes sense. When do you expect to start seeing returns on your investment? I asked. Within 90 days, I should be generating enough revenue to pay back the initial loans and start expanding operations. This time next year, I'll probably be worth millions. Maybe I'll even hire you to do my corporate accounting, Ethan boasted. Ethan spent the next hour showing me business cards he'd had printed with gold embossing, a company website he'd hired a developer to create, and incorporation documents for his new business, Harris International Trading LLC. He'd used the fraudulent loan money to create an elaborate facade of legitimate business operations. I've rented an executive office suite in the financial district, hired a receptionist and a secretary, and even put a down payment on a warehouse facility for inventory storage, he said proudly. This is going to be the business venture that finally makes me rich and proves everyone wrong about my abilities. What Ethan didn't realize was that none of the loans he'd obtained were actually his responsibility. Since he'd used my identity and credit history, I was legally liable for all $250,000 in debt if the fraud wasn't discovered and prosecuted. His so-called business empire was built on my financial reputation, and his failure would destroy my credit rating. The next morning, Detective Davis called with an update from his investigation. We've traced the business address your brother listed on the loan applications. It's a small executive office he rented using cash payments and fake business references. We also found the warehouse facility and confirmed he's been spending the loan money on business setup costs and personal luxury purchases. What's the next step in the investigation? I asked. We're preparing search warrants for the office, warehouse, and your apartment. We want to seize all evidence of the fraud and any assets purchased with the stolen loan money. The prosecutor wants an airtight case before we file federal charges, he replied. When will you execute the warrants? I inquired. Tomorrow morning around 9 a.m. We'll need you to be present when we search your apartment since it's your primary residence. Can you arrange to be available? Absolutely. I'll make sure I'm home, I said. One more thing. Don't let on to your brother that you know about the fraud. We want to catch him with all the evidence in place before he has a chance to destroy anything or flee, Detective Davis added. The next morning, I woke up early and waited for Ethan to leave for his fake office. He left at 8:30 a.m. As usual, carrying his expensive briefcase and talking loudly on his phone about important business calls he needed to make in meetings with potential overseas suppliers. At 9:15 a.m. Detective Davis arrived with 3 other officers, a federal agent, and several evidence technicians carrying boxes and camera equipment. They presented me with search warrants for my apartment and Ethan's rented office space. We'll be as careful as possible with your belongings, Detective Davis assured me as his team began systematically documenting and seizing evidence from my home office and Ethan's temporary bedroom. We found additional fraudulent documents, one of the evidence technicians told Detective Davis, holding up fake business licenses, forged bank statements, and counterfeit corporate seals. Your brother created an entire fictional business empire using your sister's credit and identity. They seized Ethan's laptop, tablet, smartphone, several boxes of financial documents, printed loan applications, and copies of my personal information that he'd been storing in his room. They also photographed the notepad with signature practice marks, collected fingerprint evidence from my filing cabinet, and documented the sophisticated setup he'd created for identity theft. At 11:30 a.m. My phone rang. It was Ethan calling from his rented office space. Hazel, there are FBI agents and police officers here with search warrants. His voice was panicked and confused. They're taking all my business equipment, computers, and documents. They're saying something about identity theft and federal fraud charges. What's going on? Did someone steal your identity? I asked calmly, following Detective Davis's instructions to not reveal my involvement. I have no idea what's happening, he said. You should cooperate with them completely and answer all their questions honestly. They're asking about loan applications and bank fraud. They want to know where I got the money to start my business. This is insane. I haven't done anything wrong. I have legitimate investors and proper business licenses. Just tell them the truth about your business, Ethan. If everything is legal and legitimate, you have nothing to worry about, I said. They're putting everything in evidence boxes and taking my computers. How am I supposed to run my business without my equipment? He complained. 2 hours later, Detective Davis called me back with an update on Ethan's arrest. We've arrested your brother on federal charges of identity theft, bank fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. He initially denied everything and claimed his business was legitimate. But when we showed him the video evidence of him stealing your documents and the audio recordings of him admitting to fraud, he broke down and confessed to the entire scheme. How did he react to being caught with all that evidence? I asked. First, anger. He was furious that you had security cameras and audio recording in your apartment. Then, desperation. He kept insisting that he planned to pay back all the loans from his business profits, so it wasn't really theft. He doesn't seem to understand that using someone's identity without permission is a serious federal crime regardless of intent to repay, Detective Davis explained. What happens next in the legal process? I inquired. He'll be arraigned tomorrow morning on federal charges. With the comprehensive evidence you provided, the prosecutor is confident we can get convictions on all counts. Your brother is looking at 8 to 10 years in federal prison, plus restitution and fines, he said. That afternoon, I started receiving phone calls from family members who'd heard about Ethan's arrest through our local family network. The reactions were predictably divided. My mother called in tears. Hazel, how could you have your own brother arrested? He was just trying to start a business and make something of himself. Family should stick together during difficult times. Mom, Ethan stole my identity and fraudulently obtained $250,000 in loans that I would have been legally responsible for. If he hadn't been caught, I could have lost my house, my savings, and my credit rating, I explained. But he's your brother. You should have talked to him privately before involving the police and destroying his life, she said. I didn't know he was committing crimes against me until I received credit alerts about fraudulent accounts. By then, he'd already obtained $250,000 through systematic identity theft, I replied. My father had a different perspective when he called later. I can't believe Ethan was stupid enough to try this kind of scheme against you. Didn't he realize you work in fraud investigation for a living? Apparently, he thought I was too trusting and disorganized to catch him, I explained. He seriously underestimated both my professional expertise and my personal security measures. He always was too clever for his own good. I just never thought he'd be dumb enough to commit federal crimes against his own sister, my father said. My Uncle Tom was furious with me when he called that evening. Hazel, you could have just co-signed business loans for Ethan if you wanted to help him succeed. There was no reason to send him to federal prison over money. Uncle Tom, I didn't co-sign anything and I wasn't asked to co-sign anything. Ethan forged my signature and stole my identity to commit bank fraud. This wasn't about me refusing to help him. This was about him committing serious federal crimes, I said. You're being vindictive and destroying family relationships. Family should help each other achieve their dreams, not destroy each other over business disagreements, he argued. This wasn't a business disagreement or a family dispute. Ethan systematically stole my personal information, forged my signature, and obtained $250,000 in fraudulent loans. If his scheme had succeeded, I could have faced financial ruin, I countered. The preliminary hearing was held 2 weeks later in federal court. I testified about the evidence I'd collected and explained how Ethan had used his access to my home to systematically gather my personal information over several months. Ethan's court.